Welcome to GayintheCLE. If this is your first time visiting, please make sure you click the subscribe button below. That way you'll always be caught up on any of the new content that's coming out. If you're a returning viewer, you remember my previous video was a public service announcement that was gay slang for the straight people. I gave you 10 slang words that would help you understand conversations that you might hear in your local gay bar, or if you're just watching RuPaul's Drag Race. Today I thought I'd bring you part 2 of that public service announcement. It's gay slang for straights, Barnyard edition. So you're telling me that gays have their own barnyard animal terms? Are these country gays? No, we don't have our own terms for the barnyard. These are descriptors for people in our community. So to give you a little bit of history, LGBTQ people have had their own language since around the 16th century. It was a form of language called Pelori. Pelori is a mixture of Romany, sailor slang, as well as thieves' cant. This was a language that was common amongst performers, prostitutes, basically anybody who was considered counterculture to a normal society. Some of the terms that were used in Pelori we still use today. You'll see things like camp, butch, chicken. These are all words that are old Pelori terms that still carry through into modern conversations. Before we get started, let me give you a disclaimer. The terms I'm going to present to you in the definitions are based on my interactions with the LGBTQ community. They may not be all-inclusive. Our terms have changed so much over the years that they tend to be community-based. So you may see things that are said in one state differ to another state or in another country. Let's get started into the first term that I have for you, and that is bear. Bear by definition is someone who is of larger frame, possibly has a belly. You'll also see facial hair as well as body hair. As I said, not all these terms are all-inclusive. Not all bears have to be hairy, as you'll see in a moment. Some do only have facial hair while they don't have body hair. Some don't have facial or body hair while they still have a larger frame. There's also what's called a muscle bear, which is one that tends to be less fat and more into a sculpted body, but still has body hair and facial hair. Usually the biggest determining factor for that is someone who does have body hair. I myself am a bear, but I don't have a lot of body hair. Bears also typically tend to be older by nature, so you don't see them as younger. If you want to throw an age range into it, you're probably thinking mid-30s on. A couple good examples of what a bear would be is, the first will be Kevin James. You probably remember him from the TV show King of Queens, and also from a couple movies he did called Paul Blart Mall Cop. Kevin isn't a stereotypical bear. He is in the fact that he is a larger guy and he does have body hair, but you don't typically see Kevin wearing a beard. A better example that's a lot closer to what most people would associate with a bear would be the politician from Pennsylvania, Brian Sims. He sports a pretty hefty beard as well as really good chest hair. He's a bit more of a muscle bear type, and he does also tend to fit the ideal that most bears are a bit more friendlier. He's very open and engaging with people. Moving from bear, the next term that we have would be a cub. A cub is much like a bear, except it's typically a younger gay male. So we're talking about late teens to early 20s, mid-20s. They're also someone that tends to be a bit more of a bigger build. You'll hear the term husky thrown around, and boy does that bring back memories of me as a child shopping with my mother to buy jeans. I remember going to the local department store, Heels or Sears, and having to shop in the husky section. And even as a kid then, I knew that was a term for being fat. So I would like to send my personal thanks to Wrangler for inventing the term husky in jeans to make all young men have body image issues. Like I said, cubs tend to be younger looking or younger by age and still having a bigger build and body hair as well as facial hair. A good example of a cub, if you look at the group Scissor Sisters, would be Baby Daddy. And if you remember the video Let's Have a Kiki, he was the one playing the keyboard. And if you remember, he had a pretty good beard that was well groomed. He also had his chest hair, and you could see his leg hair. So he's definitely someone who's a bit more of a hairier by nature. He's also a bit more solid frame, so definitely fitting into a cub nature with his younger looking appeal. The next term I have is Otter. No, not that kind of otter. In fact, I don't know any otters that make that kind of a noise. Well, you said find a clip of an otter. How was I supposed to know what you were looking for? So otters aren't defined by age nearly as much. They can be younger to older, a lean to athletic build, and also a lot of body hair. The biggest difference is that otters typically will groom their body hair. You'll see them with more close cropped beards, and usually their chest hair will be shaved down much more so you can see the definition in their body structure. A really good example of an otter is the actor Scott Conn. You probably have seen him in a TV show remake called Hawaii Five-0. He's definitely someone who is a bit more on the lesser body hair side, but he's thinner in the waist, doesn't have a belly, his beard is really well manicured, and typically shows off his chest muscles really nicely because of the fact that his hair is more closer cropped to his chest. The next term is wolf, and wolf does tend to have more of an age to it. Wolves typically are going to be an older man, more lean to a muscular type build, with usually very little in the way of chest hair, but still having facial hair. A really good example of a wolf is a name that I typically screw up very much. It's Joe Manganiello. You probably remember him from True Blood, where he played a werewolf, and he was also in the movie Magic Mike. And if you remember, the dude has a very hot body with very little body hair on it and a very well kept beard. So it's definitely a really good example of what a wolf is like. They also typically are more aggressive sexually, or even in the dating realms. So they'll be the ones that make the first move more often than not. With that in mind, the next term would be a bull. Bulls don't usually have a lot of body hair, if any at all, or facial hair for that matter. These are guys who are more heavily on the muscular side and much more aggressive, much more hyper-masculine presenting. A good example of someone that is a bull would be Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. You can see him from most of his videos. When he has facial hair, it's just this little goatee that he usually has. Very little chest hair, if any at all, and usually what is very closely cropped. The next term I have would be chicken. Chicken is much more about an age range. Chicken typically refers to a gay male who is in their mid to late teens all the way through to their mid-20s. There typically are a gay male who is looking for an older gay male to take care of them or to date. Their preferences are older gay men, which leads us to the next term, that is chicken hawk. And chicken hawk is an older gay male who's interested in, obviously, chicken. So younger gay men. Both of these are terms you don't hear as much in our community. I do remember them when I came out years ago when I was still living in Virginia. It was pretty common to have chicken nights at the bar, and it was typically when we knew most younger gay guys would show up. And on the same token, there would be a much larger, older crowd that would be there to try to pick those guys up. The next term I have for you is fish. Fish is another one that tends to refer to body type more than anything else. There's not an age limit with fish. In drag culture, if you're fish, that it typically refers to someone who looks more feminine. These are drag queens who tend to go for the illusion of a woman much more than just being an entertainer. Their clothing styles are much more feminine. They have softer painting styles with their makeup.
Who is that?
My name is Gia Gunn. I'm 23 years old. Gia's a fishy girl. Just got off the boat, you know, a little trip from Asia. Just landed like fresh tilapia.
But it doesn't stop there. Fish has also been a derogatory term used by gay men towards women for a very long time. And it's basically just a way of referring to a woman as a woman. The next term I have for you is pup. And pup has been much more newer in the scene for about the last decade or so. Pups are, if you're going to look for a body type of a pup, someone who tends to be very slender with little to no body hair. And that's about the end of where a pup's classifications fall. It tends to fall a little bit more into the kink community. You'll see in Grindr profiles, and you'll see in Scruff and Growler profiles, someone who says they're looking for puppy play. These could be a pup, especially if they're saying they're looking for a handler. It goes so far as to include masks that will give you the affectation of a dog. I've seen so far where they have worn gloves that create paws, they'll wear collars and harnesses, and some even wear tails. And I'll let you Google that to find out where the tails are. But pups, like I said, tends to be a little bit more into the kink side. They're usually have a handler. A handler is someone who would treat them much like they would a real dog. So love them and give them affection and train them. And it is usually an easier way to get started into the S&M side of kink, as there is bondage in it, but it's a little bit more affectionate as opposed to full-on S&M. The last term I have for you today is the term pig. And pig doesn't have a body type, pig doesn't have an age group. Pig is specifically about sexual preferences. These are people who are much more motivated by sex, especially the seedier sides of sex, and you'll usually see much more kink. Someone who would define himself as a pig is someone who is into and seeing body smells and sweat. So if your lover is engaged in that actively with you and likes to throw in tarps, then you might be dealing with someone who could be into the pig play. So there you have it, 10 more terms to help expand your gay vocabulary, and hopefully it shed a little bit more light into things that you probably hear being thrown around in bars that don't quite make sense. Sure, you might be able to guess bear, but some of the others could be a subcontext that you're missing, so now at least you have the definitions to help with that. You had a question in your, what's it called, email? Maybe you should answer that before you leave. Oh, and thank you for pointing out the question. I'd be happy to take a question today. As a matter of fact, I received one recently from Jay from Michigan, and Jay's question is, straight people, especially homophobic ones, have a perception that A, it's a total sexual free-for-all with gay guys, and B, monogamous long-term relationships are virtually non-existent. What elements of this are fact or fiction? Well, Jay, that's a really good question. We'll start with the first part, where you're saying straight people have a perception that gay guys are basically a sexual free-for-all. In my opinion, I've not had free-for-all experiences with sex. There's no orgies that I've been a part of. In fact, most of my nights is coming home from work, chilling out in front of the TV and binge watching Netflix or even things I haven't watched in a very long time. When I'm with my boyfriend, we're usually watching things like RuPaul's Drag Race, or we're cooking dinner together and introducing each other to music styles that we've had forever. So to say that all gay men are having free-for-alls is probably not exactly true. Do they happen? Yes. I do know guys who don't have relationships that are monogamous, who sleep around often, and sometimes engage in multiple partners at once. But I would say that's probably just as common as it is on the straight side. Matter of fact, I have plenty of straight married friends who also do the same kind of thing. They're looking for group play. So they have just as much sexual free-for-alls as we do. I think the perception comes from the fact that most gay men appear to be very friendly with a lot of other men, and it's just by nature that we're more open to our own, so it gives a perception that maybe we're a little closer. It's even a thing in some where they hug and kiss, so it's given more of an illusion that they are more intimate with each other. And I think that's probably just a misconception that people are seeing. The second part of your question is about monogamous long-term relationships and being non-existent in the gay community. From my own personal side, I would say that that's not true. Most every relationship I've been with has been monogamous. Actually, all of the relationships I've been with have been monogamous, and they've been fairly long-term. The first one that I was in shortly after I came out lasted almost 8 years, and we were monogamous. My current relationship, we're just over a year of dating, and we're monogamous. We don't bring anybody else into our relationship. It's not even something we've considered. Again, like I said, we're perfectly happy with each other. We cook together, we watch TV together, and we listen to music together. But that's not to say that monogamy is for everyone. One of the things that gay culture prided ourselves on a long time ago was not following in the check boxes that are there from heterosexual relationships. So we don't have the same driving factors. A lot of heterosexual couples get married to have kids and to get a house together and to build a family. Our family typically is just us and the other person. It's not to say that we don't raise kids. There's plenty of us that do have kids. We also may not be striving for that house in the country with a white picket fence. Some of us are just as equally as happy being in a downtown city area close to theater and music venues and eating and shopping as we would be out in the middle of nowhere in our own private little house. There are monogamous long-term relationships in LGBTQ culture, and probably almost, maybe not to the same degree that they are in heterosexual couples, again because we don't follow the same kind of check boxes. I hope this answers your questions. If any of you actually have questions you'd like to see answered on upcoming videos, comment below, or you can also send me an email. My email will be linked in the description as well as at the end of this video. If you have any comments about the video you saw or questions you'd like to add or variations to the slang that I've given you, please comment below. Tell me which ones you liked or you didn't like. Tell me the things you'd like to see coming up, or ask questions you'd like to see answered in another video. I would love to be able to help any way that I can. As always, you can find me on Twitter at RealGayPagan. You can find me on Instagram at RealKeithSimpkins. You can also check out my blog, which is pretty much a companion to the video series I'm doing here, and that is GayintheCLE.com. Thanks, and we'll catch you next time.